Live from the Fairmont Hotel in San Jose, California, it's theCUBE at BigDataSV 2015.
Okay, welcome back everyone. You are watching theCUBE live here in Silicon Valley for BigDataSV. This is our second event in Silicon Valley, with fourth overall. We had 2 events in Big Data, New York City, NYC, Big Data NYC, and now BigDataSV. We go out to the events, extract the signal from the noise, have our own event in conjunction with Strata Conference and Hadoop World going on this week. Of course, we're bringing all the CUBE magic to you, all the data, extracting the signal from the noise. I'm John Perry with Jeff Kelly. Our next guest is the esteemed Bill Schmarzo, author of the Big Data Bible, we're calling it, a friend, CUBE alumni. Congratulations on your success with your book.
Thank you, thank you.
And of course, I wrote the inside cover quote.
That's why it's popular, otherwise
it's a winner. Yeah. No, but seriously, you wrote this book on the plane, on a whim. And it's just taking off. People like this book because you just were like practical advice. Let's talk about the success of the book and just give us an update and some of the anecdotal things you've heard.
So the book's boring, right? It's a very pragmatic how-to guide and how to sort of head down the big data path, right? And so it's full of exercises and techniques and the kind of things we do on consulting projects that really help somebody get started. In fact, it's actually being used by a couple of universities as a textbook now. Seton Hall is using it, and I'm actually teaching a class now at University of San Francisco called the Big Data MBA, and this is used as kind of the textbook for that. So
when we called you the Dean of Big Data, it was more of a terms of endearment. We love you. You're like, hey, you're the guru, and we know each other, so it's kind of a fun term. But now you actually are the Dean of Big Data. Your book is being used in the university.
I think I found a second career, right? When I get tired of flying on airplanes all the time, maybe I can become a professor somewhere, the professor of Big Data. Huh?
Yeah, we'll throw in some speaking gigs too. You know, they got great retainers.
Yeah.
So, now that you're writing the book. No, seriously, so it's been fun. You have any good experiences so far with customers with this book?
Yeah, I was in and I had a client meeting recently, and I walk into the meeting, sit down, and the CIO walks in, and he has his book in his hand, and goes, "This book is the Bible. Every my organization is reading this book. It is how we're attacking things." And I was like, "What book is that?" It's my book. Oh yeah, very great. And he said, because it lays down in a very pragmatic fashion how to start. And it doesn't start by saying what technology you need to go after, because to be honest with you, the minute this book was written and published, on the technology side, it was outdated.
Yeah.
Right, it was outdated. So it frames a problem from a business perspective, which gives you the guardrails that allow the organization to make decisions about what data should I go after, what sort of analytics am I going to need, what's the technology foundation for this thing, and it allows organizations to kind of step at this thing one step at a time as they build out their big data strategy.
This is the book, Understanding Big Data, published by an amazing job by Wiley, great publisher of books. You got to check it out. Wiley's amazing. Great books. And Bill, so what's now? I mean, what I'm really, first of all, I'm impressed that you got the book done because it's one, you travel a lot.
Yeah,
and you told the story on theCUBE earlier, a couple of years ago. You just started banging out chapters because you're on a flight and you're just bored.
Well, I actually did 2 chapters sitting in the airport in Kansas City. We had like an 8-hour delay, and I'm writing. I was just like, okay, just start cranking these things out. All right, so you sit in airports and in hotel lobbies. I mean, I've seen every airplane movie, right? So what else are you going to do?
Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly, you're right. So what's going on now? Customers, what's changed now that the book's out there? Obviously it's a great book, people using it as a reference point for a big data journey. What's now chapter 2 of your journey? What are you up to now? Where are your customers, and what are some of the things you're seeing?
So the book, I think from a how-to framework perspective still works. What we're learning is, we're learning new techniques. There's 3 exercises we end up developing as part of this class I'm teaching at San Francisco. And they're exercises we now incorporate into our approach we do with customers. One of them is around how do you do BY analysis to help uncover new sources of data that you may want to go after. And so we're using the San Francisco as my petri dish, as my class there, as a way to tease out.
You could do big data yoga.
Yoga.
yoga and taking these exercises. So like stretch the data, move the data around.
There you go. Have a lot of moments. Yeah.
What have you learned? So what are you learning now? What's the big aha for you this time? Because obviously a lot of stuff's going on in the industry. You have the pivotal thing happening with this big data platform, open platform alliance, and all this stuff happening. What's going on with the technology and solutions?
Well, from a technology perspective, Hadoop is one. Right. It just, no one talks about if Hadoop, it's how I use Hadoop. And something that we talked about years ago in my experience at Yahoo, we knew the technology was solid, and too many folks were spending time doing proof of concepts on the technology instead of proof of value on how to get value out of the technology. And I tell organizations, don't do a proof of value, a proof of concept on Hadoop. I mean, Google, Yahoo, the NSA, they're all using the technology. Trust me, the technology works. The challenge organizations have is not with the technology. The challenge organizations have is where and how do I start? How do I ensure that I've got organizational buy-in? How do I ensure that I'm focused on area where I can drive a positive ROI and get a payback in 9 to 12 months? The opportunities inside of accounts, and to every account we've talked to, the problem is never lack of opportunities, it's always too many. And so the part of the process is how do you figure out where to start to build that roadmap so you basically take and knock off one use case at a time, and as you're knocking off those use cases, you're building out your analytic foundation, you're building out your intellectual assets. That still works, it still works, and Hadoop is a foundation for that.
So how do you get the business involved? Not just from you want to find the business use case, but then you got to get the rest of the organization on board and get that buy-in. How do you go about doing that?
So we run this thing called a vision workshop, and it's not a one-day exercise, it's actually a 2-week engagement where we come in and we work with the client to figure out what problem they're trying to solve. So we're doing this project for a hospital chain in Denver. Their key business initiatives around hospital-acquired infections, staph infections. People come in for some kind of treatment, they get staph infections, they spend more time in the hospital, they cost the hospital money, sometimes they even die. So how do we reduce hospital-acquired infections, right? So if that's a problem we're going after, what we do is we work with the key business stakeholders who are involved with that. We bring them in, and the two things we do with them that it's so simple. For the problem they're going after, we want to understand what decisions you're trying to make and what questions you're trying to answer in support of that decision. Now, the reason why decisions are really important because we're going to actually build analytics around each of the decisions. Not just predictive analytics, but prescriptive. We want to figure out when we talk to them about not only what are you trying to uncover, but what actions are you trying to take, right, from the decisions. And how do we deliver recommendations or prescriptive analytics to help make the human more effective in the process? And so we go through that process, we bring them in early, they realize we're there to support the decision-making process, and then we do some glitzy things. We build a simple mock-up, to show them how this might render itself within their mobile app or in their web app or in their call center, wherever the right environment might be. And that really helps them to see how they, begin with an end in mind. It really shows them that here's where we're going to go, right? Everything we're going to do along the path to get there as far as the decisions, the questions, the data, the analytic models, the technology eventually is going to come in here and they don't care about the technology, but in the end, you're going to get a smart app that tells you that when there's a snowstorm, the first snowstorm of the year in Denver, if you get between 3 to 4 inches, the number of ER visits increases by 27%. What's interesting, they say, oh yeah, we knew they'd increased it. We knew it increased, right? We didn't know 27%. Now I know exactly how many more nurses to hire, how many more doctors I have on hand. In some cases, all we're doing is quantifying the hunches that they have. And that's why it's important to bring them in early, because they know that decision they're trying to make, and they have those hunches. We're going to use analytics to either prove or disprove them.
But nowhere in that conversation did the word Hadoop come up.
Not once. And they could give a holy hoot about the technology. Hadoop, Spark, MapReduce, Yarn, it's alphabet soup to them. What they care about is how do I make that better decision?
Yeah, so we'll talk about how this compares to kind of the more traditional way of doing quote unquote analytics in the enterprise, which is kind of the data warehouse approach, which is more kind of looking back versus what do I do next? How does it compare? Is this complementary, do you think, or is this disruptive, or some combination of both?
Well, it's complementary in the sense that BI is about descriptive analytics, measuring what happened. Big data is about predictive analytics, what is going to happen, and it's about prescriptive analytics, what should I do? And so at the high level, they are very complementary. The challenge we have is that most BI organizations think they're doing predictive. Right, and yeah, they're building trend lines that show some lines going up and things, but they really aren't figuring out what's going to happen with any level of confidence, and they have no idea how to deliver recommendations. And so while at the high level, the data warehouse, the EDW, is not going to go anywhere. It's still very important. You still need to have, end of day, end of week, end of month, those reports come out. On Monday morning when the executives show up, the dashboards are all updated. But it only tells you what happened, how many beds I filled, how many patients I have, what my sales were last week, right? The data science is about doing the predictive about what is going to happen. Snowstorm comes, you're going to have 27% more, and then the recommendations. You need to bring in 2 extra nurses, you bring in one extra doctor. By the way, the kinds of incidences you're going to have are going to be lacerations and head wounds. You're going to need to following medication. Get to the prescriptive, get to those recommendations, and it requires. One of the things we find in the process is that IT organizations are really good at thinking better, cheaper, faster, better. They're not good at thinking different. And for most organizations, it's not the technology gets in the way, it's the mindset of saying, okay, I got the enterprise data warehouse, I'm thinking retrospective, what's happening, I need to change my mentality. And some people can't make that switch.
And do you find the business is more likely to take new approaches? They're easier to talk to and think about doing things a different way rather than the IT, which might be stuck in a certain way of doing things?
I think it's a good point, Jeff. I think it is exactly right. I think the business folks are seeing for the first time an opportunity for something going
well,
forward.
they're the ones feeling the pain.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they're the ones who are, today they're getting these charts and dashboards and reports, big, huge reports, and what the heck am I going to do with this? We had an engagement with a grocery chain, and we were developing we created this mock-up, and the store manager of the store we were dealing with had this BI report, green arrow, yellow arrow, red arrow, and she goes, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? Right, it doesn't tell me anything I can act on, right? And so the users are frustrated by the BI tools telling you that you suck without giving any guidance about how to unsuck.
So Bill, I want to drill down on that, because one of the things we hear all the time, first of all, we do hear that Hadoop is a boardroom conversation, necessarily not Hadoop, or at least what Hadoop will do in terms of solution, that's one thing. But also there's pressure to move fast and change. Obviously, it's happening all around us in the industry. Open data platform is one example, much others. But I want to talk about the customer. We've heard from practitioners on theCUBE and also privately, it's like, hey, if someone walks in my door and says, I got a platform for you, I'm going to shoot myself. I mean, literally, and meaning they're like so oversold on platforms, just, hey, buy my platform and your problems are solved. When they just want some tooling and then maybe back into a platform, are you seeing fatigue on the sales side, customers getting bombarded with platform this, platform that, a lot of rip and replace, a lot of promises, not a lot of delivery? So do you see that? And if you do or don't, talk about that dynamic, what's going on.
So John, I think you're spot on. I mean, I think the customers out there are really sick of hearing yet another platform. They don't know what it means, and they don't know how it helps them. I think last time I was on it, we jokingly said, it's not the 3 V's of big data, it's the 4 M's, right? Make me more money. So they don't understand how the platform helps them make more money, and so they push back on the vendors. And we see a lot of product sales flatlining because they're just tired of buying on someone's promise. What's happening, and especially inside of EMC, is we're seeing that our go-to-market approach has to change. It has to be focused on our customer success. And I'm not talking about customer success in standing up the stinking technology. I'm talking about customer success and helping to drive their top line, helping to sell more products, help them to be more effective.
Help your customers' customers.
Help your customers' customers.
That's what you mean.
Yeah. Well, in some cases, yeah. And here's a good example. We're doing this project for a casino. And how do we... Hard
to write a book in a casino, isn't it?
Oh, God. Yeah, it is.
Sorry,
yeah. Unfortunately, the money's going the wrong direction. But I can tell you, I know what slot machines to play. So, but they're trying to figure out how they get more interaction, right? So, and yeah, they've got ways to interact with the actual player themselves, what kind of incentives they send them and what kind of comps they give them. But how do you arm all those frontline employees, the ambassadors, the hostesses, the pit boss, the floor manager, the valet, the waitress, the bartender, right? All these people who are touching the players for the day, how do I make them more effective in conveying a better player experience? And so while yes, it is ultimately about how do I get the consumer to do more, the player to do more, the patient to be more effective, the teacher to be more effective, the student to be more effective, right? It's how do I basically figure out how to empower the human in between to make them more effective. So I know you come into the casino and I know this is your favorite slot machine, and so I make sure that slot machine's available. and I take you right to it. I rush you through checkout so you're not spending any time in the hotel. I got your drink waiting for you there. Start shoving, well, you're probably a nickel player, but actually knowing you're probably a big dollar player, but you're shoving your dollars in there.
No, I don't do slots. I'm not a slot person.
Okay.
I'm not a big slot guy.
But that's, the idea is how does the hostess then get you to your game quicker and make sure you have a great experience?
Well, it's about personalizing the experience, and that's what it's all about, whether it's in casinos or any industry where you're consumer facing. It's about, people come to expect that kind of personalization you get in when you open your Facebook account, and you expect that kind of personalization. This is all about me, and they expect that now in the real world as well.
Yes, they do. It's about personalization not only to your customers, but also personalization to your employees.
That's a good point, too.
You got to think about the single most important person in the grocery business is a store manager. Not the senior vice president of marketing, no matter what he or she may say. It's a store manager who every day is making pricing decisions and placement decisions and markdown decisions. How do you make them more effective? Right? How do I make sure that I'm delivering the right kinds of insights, recommendations that helps them to know that, hey, on this particular day, you're a mile and a half from Stanford football stadium and they're playing Cal this weekend. You're going to need to have more beer. And by the way, Stanford fans don't drink Budweiser.
And they can't bring beer in Stanford Stadium. I know that because we try to sneak it in, but that's a whole different story.
We're not very good
as you know.
at
No, so let's get back. You bring up this interesting concept: immersive experiences in the moment. You see things like Twitter, certainly on the crowd conversations with crowd chat. What we do, you're talking about crossing the street, mobile device, games. You're talking about in the moment, real time, right? So, what are you seeing with real time? Obviously, that's becoming more and more of the value proposition because people are in real time with mobile devices, whether they're things or people.
And let me kind of dissect the term real time for a second. So what we find is when we look at a business process, a business problem we're going after, we try to decompose that into the data events that occur. And there's almost always in there some data event where timeliness is important. Let me give you an example. Hospital-acquired infections. When you check into the hospital, we figure you got the person at admissions has between 4 to 5 minutes to figure out the likelihood of you capturing staph infection. Right? We've already pre-built a score that looks at your likelihood, but the nurse also looks for, do you have any open wounds? Right? And we're also going to take into account what kind of treatment are you in for? Are you going to need a catheter? Right? If those three variables tell us about the probability of you're going to probably capture staph infection, and if your score is too high, we actually can push you to a different part of the hospital. Right? To receive more care, you might spend an extra day there, but you're not going to get a staph infection. Right? So in that case, I'm not making a second-based decision, right? You're walking in front of a Starbucks, there you are, boom, Schmarzo, here's your favorite drink, come in and get it, right? Sometimes the timeliness might be measured in minutes, maybe even hours, but it's not batch, right? We're trying to be
near
more
real time.
It's near real time, and so the only way that you can really think through how real time it needs to be is to take that business process and decompose it.
Hold on. We've got 1 minute left. I want to ask you a question. I want you to respond to this.
Wait, I only got 1 minute left?
No, well, we'll go over. We always go over with you.
I got to ask you guys a question.
Technically,
I have to ask you guys a question yet. I got a tough question for you.
Well, ask me a tough question after I get this one out there. I want you to react to the following two concepts. Okay. Systems of record and systems of engagement. What's the difference and where's the action?
Oh, that's a great question. It's the debate I have a lot of organizations is creating a 360-degree view of the customer, which I think is BS, right? Why? Right? Versus creating a profile on a customer where you've quantified all their behaviors. To me, that's the difference, right? I have a system of record, which is my historical 360-degree view of them, but I'm actually more interested in building this system of engagement. We're working with a financial services firm, and we're creating a retirement readiness score for all their customers, right? It's like a FICO score, but you take all the other aspects and you create these scores. The hospital chain wants to create a health score and a stress score. The stress score, by the way, is going to feed in lumosity data, so we can help measure what's going on. So to me, it's the difference between 360-degree view of the customer, which is nice but not actionable, but it's important data to have, versus this system of engagement where I'm actually got a bunch of metrics, a bunch of measures, a bunch of scores in place that actually help me make better decisions.
So more real-time, more active data?
It's definitely, yes, it's active. I'm not sure. Again,
are they decoupled or are they integrated?
They're decoupled. Okay. They're decoupled. To me, you're going to feed that system of record data, and you're going to run through it and munge it, because you need to have historical perspective.
We're just checking where you're at here.
Well, but you still have to understand who that individual is, right? So you have to. You don't want to have, if you've got 3 profiles for the same person, that's not good. You do need to have that 360-degree view, but then it's about adding in the components around what should I do to engage these
And you
people.
may not capture everything about that customer. There's maybe things that,
yeah.
that you don't need to capture.
Maybe you don't need the 360-degree view.
Right, maybe 180 is good enough.
And it
right?
depends on your business and what the use case is. In some cases, it's like data quality. You don't need 100% data quality for every use case.
Good point. And if you don't have the history, I mean, what's real-time data without historical perspective? That's noise, right? So you got to have that historical perspective because then you build those profiles. I know what kind of products John buys, and what kind of food you're interested in, what kind of games you like to play. Right? If I know that historically, and I notice a change in that, that may be something I want to act on. Right? You're getting ready to leave. You're going through a life of change event or something like that. I need to have that history so that as the real data comes in, I have something to compare it to.
So we know you've got your finger on the pulse, as always, Dean, of big data. We think, we were talking this a lot last night, heavily and all day yesterday. We think that Wikibon and the SiliconANGLE team, that systems of engagement is a holy grail.
Yeah.
Because undefined, no one has that, it's not mature, but it's real time, it's in the moment, it's immersive, it's active.
And we call those analytic profiles.
Yeah,
We're building analytic profiles on the strategic nouns of their business. And it might be customers, it might be stores, it might be product, and wind turbines, it might be jet engines.
Okay, so now ask us the question. What do you want to do? Which is,
this is a reversal role here.
The dean is going to ask the students, pupils.
Big data and is all about openness, right? Open
Mm-hmm.
technology, in many cases open business models and open data. Here you are at the Strata event run by Riley, who is an advocate at open, and yet you guys are over here at the Fairmont. It seems to be something contrary here that maybe they say open out of one side of their mouth, but don't mean it out of the other side of their mouth?
Is there a question?
Yes.
Is there a specific question?
Yes. So what do you think about their definition of open?
I think O'Reilly is a closed organization. I mean, it's a closed mindset, right? Closed is about a walled garden.
Yes.
AOL was a closed system.
Yep.
It did great and then died. Okay, walled gardens don't work in the media business. That's proven. O'Reilly's a walled garden, and they pretend to be open, but they're really not. And so theCUBE has been part of the open community.
Amen.
We help people. You wrote a book. It's helped people. We were last night talking to people. There's some big data stuff. We heard people's lives are being saved. Someone was doing this big data project based on theCUBE. Saw some suicide prevention technology. Then that changed some lives there. We saw people change their business. So we're open. So we're open source media. So O'Reilly is closed. We're open, and that's just the way it is. And hey, that's their business model. Ours is different. So we don't necessarily have any feelings that way. It's just a bad decision on their part as far as we're concerned. But we support that. They're putting out some content. We'll point to it. In fact, we're linking a lot of their stuff.
The reason why I asked the question is that one of the things I'm observing almost boiling up right now is organizations moving to more open business models.
Yeah.
Models that allow third parties to make money on their platform. And one of the ways that becomes important is because you think about they become marketplaces and you're capturing data about the players, the products, and you're trying to help match and merge things together. The whole idea of how do I build a model that can, no company can innovate as fast as a marketplace.
So you're like a management consultant as well as a technology leader, which is awesome to see customers get that value from your expertise at EMC, and I agree. So our philosophy, and talk about the O'Reilly question, it's just a difference of philosophy.
Yes.
It's like they have their business model, they're closed, they'll ultimately go the path of what walled gardens become, highly profitable, and then they milk it and have to reinvent themselves again. But we're seeing this inside-out organization where value and community models are all about sharing and collaboration. Some call it the sharing economy, whatnot. That's what we're part of.
Yep.
We're part of this new revolution. But Dan Hutchins at CSC was on theCUBE at Oracle Open World, where it's now open because theCUBE is there, and they're open world. He pointed out what he's doing at CSC is building an inside-out organization. Meaning they believe that they have to take their inside of their company and make it outside. So for instance, they're doing crowd chats internally, having all hands meetings on crowd chat publicly for the open. So doing things in the open really changes the dynamic. So you're seeing corporations going inside out. You're seeing paradigms like permaless security. A good friend of theCUBE, Steve Harrod over there at General Atlantic, he's got investments where it's not about the moat anymore in the walled garden, it's about notification economy, sharing economy. Inside out seems to be the model.
So I would conclude this part of the conversation by saying that there was a quote made recently that code trumps cash. I would tell you that business models trump code, that an open business model is the key to success. And what's happening is organizations, not only in vendors in the big data space, but now corporations are starting to realize that in order to be successful long term, they need to become more open. And big data plays a very important role, because the way to become open is to create this marketplace and provide insights to all the participants that allows them all to be successful.
Bill, great to have you, and thanks for opening up the Pandora's box on our openness. And you know, we love, Tim O'Reilly's been on theCUBE many times.
Yes.
We love O'Reilly, love you. Open, for us, content is everything, right? Content is what creates opportunity in the social web. It's about social. Thanks for coming on. Has always been a great friend. This is theCUBE. We're live in Silicon Valley for Big Data SV in conjunction with Hadoop World and Strata Conference. We are here live in Silicon Valley at the Fairmont. We'll be right back after this short break.